Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm Dr. Juanita Dixon, hashtag the technical creative. And thank you for joining me today at We21. I hope to exemplify this year's conference theme of Aspire to Inspire as I share with you what I've learned about leading virtual teams. Please continue to aspire to inspire by attending the inspirational insight sessions, keynotes, and global networking. Also, if a career change is in store, remember the virtual career fair will be on October 26th. For your convenience, this deck will be shared as well since it contains templates and a reading list. And before we get started, I would like to note the opinions expressed in this presentation are my own and in no way represent the views or standpoint of Carrier Corporation. Okay, now let's talk about Leading with Love, the League of Virtual Engineers. The problem that I'm addressing today is how to lead virtual teams of engineers. It is relevant to We21 attendees now more than ever, as with the proliferation of remote work and changes to how work gets planned and managed. Leading through a once-in-a-lifetime crisis calls for emotional intelligence, in addition to those hard technical skills. We'll explore the body of research together and then have a discussion on how to address these as leaders of engineering teams. So this is the game plan for our time together. I begin with the purpose of this study and a bit about my theoretical foundation. This leads into building the toolkit from various bodies of knowledge. Confluence means the junction of two rivers of equal width. I chose this title as our team has demonstrated the ability to span engineering and operations to drive shared cost and productivity savings goals. And finally, a few takeaways for further leadership development on the topic of virtual team management. Here are our learning outcomes and a reminder of what we will learn today from this session. We'll review ideas from the field of diversity, equity, and inclusion, specifically how employees feel a sense of belonging on a team. I'll take you through the development of my team at Carrier Corporation, the Engineering Productivity and Cost Team, a league of diverse engineers tasked with taking costs out of shipped products and finding ways to make engineering tasks more efficient and effective. We'll conclude our learning with how to lead with love in 3 to 5 sentences. My personal why. I often find myself working across generations, cultures, and viewpoints of people. I grew up in rural North Carolina and was raised by my great aunt. She was a retired school teacher, while my parents worked to provide for my little brother and me. Now, my great aunt's eyesight was not very good, and she was a proud woman, so she didn't want others to know about it. So she taught me to read at the age of 4 so that I could read the newspaper to her. Her love and support through our morning ritual of reading the newspaper and having a cup of tea led to my ability to relate to older generations on their level. I'd spend hours immersed in reading, drawing, and dreaming of how to apply the things that I'd heard or the things that I had read to new challenges. The best part was surrounding myself with different people, trading knowledge, and inspiring each other. Fast forward several years, and I went to college to study mechanical engineering at a historically Black college, North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University. Hailing from different states in the US, as well as countries around the world that I'd only ever read about, there were many opportunities to trade stories and our shared love of art and science of engineering. My curiosity to understand how physical parts form systems and how those interactions would make them work was matched only by my love of people for what we can uniquely bring to solve problems together. I spent time as an undergraduate conducting research for a tenured professor. This resulted in my first flight to present our paper at a conference. Little did I know that one day I would live in that Los Angeles area where the conference was held. It's been quite the journey. Each role has shaped the leader that I was becoming. A chance meeting with an executive in 2008 would change the trajectory of my career forever with my appointment to the role of Program Integration Manager. My challenge was to lead the execution of engineering work being completed by engineers based in Florida, while headquarters was out in California, in the Los Angeles area. Through this experience, I gained understanding of the needs of our NASA customers and how that aligned with the C-suite vision for our organization. This led me to ask, what was the best approach for structuring these virtual teams? What could I learn from others who had done both task-based outsourcing and integrated product development team management using virtual employees? Well, my years of work and lived experience culminated in my doctoral research entitled Leading Strangers, a grounded theory study of project team managers' perspectives of virtual team management. This study focused on the differences between team integration and task-based outsourced work and was published in 2012, nearly a decade before the global pandemic forced companies into remote working at scale. Balancing the charge to get stuff done with the need to foster a culture of belonging amongst employees, it is now time to refresh my research and navigate what comes next. I am pleased to present Leading Strangers with Love, the League of Virtual Engineers. Let's begin by filling our toolkit. With the theme of knowing myself first and then learning how to influence others, I read multiple books and articles. They may be grouped into these 6 themes that you will see on the screen behind me. Today, we'll explore each of these with self-awareness and leadership type as the foundation. High EQ, to empathize with and understand others. Fostering a sense of belonging amongst team members. Giving and receiving feedback while holding each other accountable. Innovation techniques to learn about the world around us. And finally, virtually integrating engineers into a high-performing team. Socrates writes, "To know thyself is the beginning of wisdom." And before leading others, it's important to understand and start with the knowledge of self. My Myers-Briggs type indicator is ENTJ, the commander. I am an extrovert, intuitive, thinking, and judging. Now, this type represents 2% of the global population and 1% of women overall. My outgoing personality can either energize or repel, depending on the environment which we're operating in. Now, being intuitive, I have a desire to focus on the big picture, and I easily see patterns. As a thinker versus a feeler, I value making objective, consistent decisions after weighing the pros and cons. And the J, judgment, it alludes to my comfortability with sticking to the plan. The plan when creating this virtual league of engineers is to balance their technical abilities with the way that they like to relate to others on the team. Sharing my story with them opens the dialogue for them to share as well. and to explore how they view things and express this within the team. So this is my leader's intent. It's taken from Thayer's Leading High-Performing Teams course. Thayer is the U.S. Army's leadership development program with the focus on how to achieve business objectives by maximizing team performance. It begins with sharing my worldview in a few sentences and represents what my team can expect from me. It's a great exercise to create your own so that you can coach others as well. So let's go through them. Simply, I don't take no for an answer for myself or for my team. Instead, let's focus on how we might achieve that mission. Feedback given and received in a direct, honest, but compassionate way allows us to grow together. It's important for my team to know what they can expect from me and from each other. I do what I say I will do, and I walk the talk. Finally, when the league comes together with their own unique superpowers, we are truly unstoppable. So you heard my leader's intent, and now you're brand new to my team. What are a few ways that I might use to keep you motivated and feel cared for? Co-locate. We are a multinational organization with locations around the world. Instead of being alone, you'll have a local hub to connect with other employees, not just engineers, for inspiration and support. Hybrid work. Respecting the needs of each engineer. Introversion is the most common trait. This allows time to connect face-to-face as needed without any in-group, out-group type behaviors, since everyone on my team has equal access to me as their leader. Team building. Doing creative projects together gives a shared sense of accomplishment and the ability to use both sides of our brain creatively. One-on-ones and etc. offer private time to share concerns, celebrate victories, and learn about each other as people beyond employees. Cross-training. What can I learn from this experience to apply to my work? I'll constantly challenge you as part of my team to do this. And how will the role that you're in now help you to achieve future success? Like in geometry, some things are necessary, but not sufficient to validate a proof. Diversity is recruiting others. Equity is giving them the same access and ability to succeed. And inclusion is having a seat at the table to be heard and to make decisions. For a sense of belonging, we need all of these things. This shifts the focus from recruitment to retention in the employee experience. As you see the lines on the screen, which ones resonate with you the most as an engineer on a virtual team? And why? Because understanding each engineer's why or motivation enables me as the leader to identify the what. What actions are needed to increase that engineer's sense of belonging on the team? If you don't know where you're going, you might not get there, says Yogi Berra. This sets the tone for the relationship between the team and the leader. And I like to begin with the end point in mind. I took inspiration from the book as a new team leader. The book is called Radical Candor by Kim Scott. Miss Scott opens with the story. There was a man that used to work on her team. He was very well liked, and he'd been with the organization for a while. Members of the team felt a certain kinship or attachment to him, so much so that they would cover up for him when his project work was not quite meeting the expectation, or sometimes even having to redo the work. As happens in organizations, the time came for staff reductions, and Ms. Scott, as their supervisor, she had to let him go. She struggled over the decision. She decided to take him out to lunch so that she could prepare and give him, this really hard news in a compassionate way. First, she shared some feedback on his performance, and she thanked him for his time with the company. The man bitterly replied, "Why didn't anyone tell me?" He had no idea. It was at that moment that Ms. Scott vowed she would never find herself or anyone on her team in that position again. Candor is what she had to use in that moment. Candor is defined as the quality of being open and honest in expression. In professional environments, many shy away from confrontation and having to have those hard conversations with employees and others. Radical candor, because it's a very radical approach to lean into that discomfort so the team can grow together. And it means loving the person enough to share the positives and negatives about their performance so that adjustments can be made before it's too late. Without that radical candor and treating engineers with love, misalignments and misunderstandings versus expectations, they're going to occur. And employees will no longer feel trust or commitment to the company or the team. 360-degree feedback is an exercise that leaders can use to get a full view of their strengths and opportunity areas. It's an anonymous survey that's sent out to your peers, to your direct reports, your supervisor, and any other stakeholders you respect and would like to get honest feedback from. The results get summarized, and plans are developed based upon those results. The important thing when going into that process is to be humble when receiving that feedback. So, how might we express radical candor for our staff? What does that look like? How might we encourage an environment where our staff can give us as leaders feedback, as well as feedback to each other and themselves? The answer is establishing vulnerability and trust, as people can tell when the love is reciprocated and that their needs are truly being considered. Leaders must get across the why as well as the what. Their people need more than milestones for motivation. They are thirsting for meaning, to understand how their goals relate to the mission. Once the vulnerable trust is established and there's an environment of mutual feedback, we can discuss performance expectations. Since employees need more than milestones to be motivated, we use a tool called policy deployment. In policy deployment, the goals of the CEO and the executive leadership team are shared with all employees in the organization, so we can clearly see how our efforts really matter and contribute to the overall vision. It gives a view of the 5, 3, and 1-year goals that we will all collectively meet. This document gets tailored for each functional discipline to include engineering, and the goal alignment process is where my staff and I will set our team objectives, and then finally, our individual objectives. This transparency results in everyone knowing what they're responsible for and what they can expect from others on the team as well. Two different innovation methods I learned were lean startup and design thinking. The objective is to meet the customer's needs beyond the technical functionality of a solution, moving into social and emotional reasons that a specific product or service offering is chosen over an alternative. The only difference in the two methods is the area of focus. In Lean Startup, we design and conduct solution experiments. The idea is to think in terms of quickly showing a solution to the customer, testing and iterating on the design until a solution is reached that will be accepted. In contrast, in design thinking, we first seek a deep understanding of customer problems. We focus on the psychology of what purchase behavior is before we prescribe those solutions. Insights are gathered through customer interviews instead of using surveys, and we analyze them for themes. The problems emerge, and there may be more than one, as jobs to be done, or things that a customer is seeking to do or achieve with that product or service. An existing fix may be in place, so it's important to analyze not just the problems, but areas and opportunities where we can delight the customer with our solution. Solution storming and ideation, that's the creative time for the team to imagine possibilities and prototype a solution. The solution will consist of the minimum functionality that simulates a delightful experience for the customer. We iterate and we design and we test with the users, and then when the configuration is locked, we're able to scale it and take it to business model and determine whether we should make or buy, license or distribute, etc. The customers or users of my team as a service offering are the vice presidents of engineering and operations. A few insights. Sourcing of components or parts that we're going to use to build our products is decentralized around the world. And to make changes to existing products, assistance is needed from the product development teams and design engineers. Now, those engineering resources that design products, they're allocated based on existing and new product development, and they're not prioritized for cost reduction projects. The problem, cost reduction ideas need evaluation for technical feasibility. How would the system change if I swap the source for this part? Coordination and project management is therefore needed at each factory level to implement those changes. And who has time to implement those changes and ensure that they're done in a timely manner? The solution. Design an organization structure that would include virtual engineers with specialized skills and a focus on bridging that gap between sourcing, product design engineering, and the factory where these changes would have to be implemented. Test that structure once it's in place, and open those lines of communication with stakeholders from engineering and operations functional silos. Finally, validate that strategy. The team has enabled the delivery of product cost savings across the enterprise and evolved into a WHQ level initiative, and now 3 times the number of employees are working on this mission. When in charge of an organization, ENTJs desire and have the ability to visualize where the organization is going, and they seem unusually able to communicate that vision to others. Being a leader with vision and the ability to distill strategic decision-making into operational steps is my gift and my passion and my value proposition to the organizations that I'm a part of. As an ENTJ, I began with sharing my leader's intent with the team and encouraged them to develop their own. Next, high EQ techniques were used to identify what different individuals would value most. A sense of belonging would be at the heart of leading with love as I turn outward to consider the needs and the values of others. Circling back to self, I studied radical candor for themes of being clear in expectations and holding myself and others accountable. Rounding out my literature review, lean startup and design thinking. This provided the needed creativity and structure, as well as gave some ideas of ways to focus on customer needs beyond technical requirements as we execute our work. With this foundation, it was time to onboard my team members and welcome them to a newly formed team. Let's dive into the history of this team in the following case study to understand how our culture was built with love. Our company was formerly a part of the commercial products portfolio side of United Technologies Corporation. At the time, it consisted of UTC, Climate Controls and Security, and Otis, who made elevators and escalators. In June of 2019, I moved from a role in innovation and research leadership to a special assignment for the then Vice President of Global Engineering. My task was to identify areas in the organization that could benefit from greater lines of communication with engineering. The task at the enterprise level, find ways to take cost out of shipped product via the direct material procurement of the parts that we buy, assemble, test, and sell to customers as products. In order to design an organization that could address these issues at an enterprise level, I had to understand the existing stakeholders, products, markets, category strategy, and design constraints associated with making changes to the standard product development life cycles. This research was completed and a proposed department structure was created in December of 2019, coinciding with the retirement of the Vice President of Engineering. There are two approaches we considered for executing value engineering, taking cost out of products. Option one, the current state as of December 2019, was to continue with decentralized, independent projects driven out of WHQ sourcing. As deals were signed with suppliers of components, the problem of proliferation in the business unit product engineering teams became apparent, as this represented unplanned incremental demand for engineering resources. Now, at the factory levels, some locations had mature cost out processes, while others were only used to implementing 1 to 2 changes per year. This was compounded by COVID-related part shortages and raw material inflation. Lines of communication were also strained, with each person doing what they believed was best, without an end-to-end product lifecycle understanding. Projects stalled and leaders demanded a solution. February 2020, I briefed the new Vice President of Engineering on the connections between engineering and supply chain and received approval to implement the proposed org structure, naming my staff Engineering Supply Chain Support. In partnership with Business Unit Engineering and Supply Chain Leadership, I onboarded 4 staff roles with dedicated responsibility to those business segments, 2 in the HVAC space, 1 in refrigeration, and 1 in fire and security products. With resilience, focus on organizational goals, and leveraging our shared capabilities, we delivered the direction and structure to how cost savings projects and initiatives could be done at an enterprise level with best practice sharing. We also used a triage approach. So when project ideas came in, we would get together as a team and determine who was best suited to execute. Using this cross-business unit knowledge sharing and support, each member had their own specific role and value proposition to the organization, and therefore a sense of belonging. In August 2020, the team faced an inflection point. Option 2 was an augmentation in August of 2020. Success criteria was to find ways for engineering to better coordinate initiatives driven out of WHQ sourcing and hit our cost savings targets. I recruited and onboarded a WHQ League of Virtual Engineers who would represent the interests of each BU product engineering team in meetings with supply chain. These alignment meetings were where resource needs were raised and sourcing decision impacts were considered along the entire product lifecycle. The initial core four were joined with support functions, engineers from other parts of WHQ engineering, with a shared affinity of optimizing those connections between engineering and operations. Our mission expanded from just taking cost out of products to include ways to make engineers more productive and do more in less time. As we reflect on our accomplishments, we have successfully improved communication and contributed to the business unit engineering product team's cost-saving goals by providing tactical project management and feasibility assessment of cost and productivity ideas. The request for quote process has also been shortened, as we were able to coordinate the collection of drawings, specifications, and part data to be sent to alternate suppliers that were going to bid on Carrier's business. And the accomplishment of which I am the most proud, my core four are recognized as global leaders and have become part of a WHQ initiative to drive cost out of products at a greater level. This validates that a small, focused, central function is effective in establishing communities of practice, laying down processes, procedures, and a foundation, and most importantly, sharing information and communicating across functional silos. I offer the following recommendations based upon this experience and my research. First, lead with love. Begin with an understanding of yourself and do the work needed to build and motivate a team. Second, do the work to maintain a positive, inclusive structure and culture. Use 360-degree feedback to hold everyone accountable. Third, think creatively, experiment together, and repeat until equilibrium is reached. Let's reflect on our learning outcomes. You've heard our story and you've heard the research. Do you recall the dimensions of belonging? Take a moment and note down 3 from this list that you'd like to focus on. All right, let's hear your action plan. Here's a template that you can use to organize your thoughts. Objectives are a list of the goals. We will place our KPIs there, the 3 things that you wrote down from the dimensions of belonging. Tasks are the things that we need to do to achieve those objectives. Success criteria is how we will know that we achieve the goals. Time frame is when we will complete our task. And resources are what we need to enable our success. They may include people, money, equipment, etc. Reflect on the case study, Confluence, the engineering productivity and cost team. Here we see the end-to-end timeline with each of the inflection points. What inspiration did you gather from hearing my story? What inspiration did you gather from hearing the history of our team? What might you do the same or differently if you were leading the team? Use this space to write your own leader's intent with 3 to 5 sentences of how you would lead your virtual team with love. Leading with love is worth the investment in others and yourself. Every new experience or connection is a chance to grow. We need each other, and through belonging, we will win together. For further study, you may find some of these references useful. The first is my dissertation. The others, a couple of books that I found interesting in my own leadership development study. Thank you for joining me in my presentation today. I hope that you found it interesting and useful. I appreciate you taking the time and initiative to attend this We21 presentation virtually. And I hope to have you join me in person next October at We22, Houston, Texas. Until then, be smart, stay healthy, and aspire to inspire. And please fill out the survey and give us some feedback on how you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you. So the best way to give and receive feedback in a team setting is to use a tool that's referred to as 360-degree feedback. So 360 degrees like a circle. You get feedback as a leader, not only from your peers, people that are the same level, but perhaps different parts of the organization, your direct reports, your supervisor, and then other mentors, sponsors, or stakeholders to the process that you're working on in your job. The reason that I believe that this is the best way to get and receive feedback is because 360 is pretty much anonymous. All of the results are combined and summarized into themes. And with those themes, as a leader, you can decide what type of plans to take into account. My 360-degree feedback, I was given feedback as a new leader that I needed to delegate more. It was a little hard to hear, but it was necessary for me to grow as a leader and for our team to move forward. So the plan, I took some training classes on delegation, and I had a lot of one-on-one sessions with each person on my team, talking through how they best like to work and how they like to receive feedback when they meet challenges. So the best way for a company to show that they care about their employees, reflect back on those dimensions of belonging. Our company, as well as a lot of multinational corporations, use something referred to as a pulse survey. Now, the pulse survey is managed across many different companies in the same space, where they'll send a survey out to each employee, and we can give the company feedback. Again, it's anonymous. All the results are aggregated and then shared out in a transparent way. The best way a company can show that they care about employees, or dare I say that they love their employees, is to take that feedback as a gift. Take action. Be radically candid about the things that can be changed, the things that cannot be changed, and help employees to understand how to manage the difference. In my leader's intent, I state that I don't take no for an answer. The reason I don't take no for an answer in terms of project limitations, sometimes the question that I'm asking is not the right question. So when you respond with no, it's my job to figure out what's the objective, what's the real problem that needs to be solved, and how to navigate and how to manage that. So a direct example. Hi, we're getting ready to start this project, and all I need is $1.5 million, and I'm going to outsource it to this company that we've been using for the past 15 years. It's going to be amazing. We've got our project timelines. We're ready to go. No. No to what exactly? No, you can't have 1.5 million. Okay. The problem that I'm trying to solve is how to achieve this project work, and I don't have existing resources that are available to work on the project. How might we get together with that team and find out what are they working on currently and where does this new project demand fit in terms of prioritization? What's the result? They might be working on something that's lower priority because it's not going to achieve the savings that this idea would. So thank you. You gave me the resources that I needed. I guess you were right. I didn't need the 1.5 million.